Hello and welcome to the GrapeSEED Official Podcast. In this episode of the All These Things series, we will focus on Units 21 to 30. If you're looking for content on Units 31 and up, hang tight. The next and last episode in this series will be about those units. In the All These Things podcast on writers and readers, as well as the Deep Dive podcast on GrapeSEED's Road to Reading and Writing, we have highlighted the evolution of our program, especially in Units 1 to 20. As our students grow and mature as children and as English learners, so too does the content of GrapeSEED need to change to stay age and skill appropriate. This doesn't just stop at the language content. The tasks and activities we do with our students change dramatically as well. Think of Unit 1 without any physical writing to students writing sentences in their writers in Unit 20. A lot changes in those first 20 units, and as we move into Unit 21 and above, it continues to change. Let's start with looking at our tools from Units 21 to 30. You will notice that some of the same components are available to you: vocabulary picture cards, songs, chants, and stories. On the other hand, you might notice a lack of shared reading poems in big books. Through all the work we have done building up our students' reading abilities in the first 20 units, we no longer need these simpler shared reading materials. Instead, the reader, now called the adventure reader, and the writer are more robust. As far as resources, you have newly created lesson plans to help guide you through these units and provide clear, day-to-day instructions to help you make the most of these components. You also have teacher manuals available online on the portal that can be referenced anytime, as well as the answer key for the writer activities called the GrapeSEED Writer Teacher Book. One quick note: for Units 1 to 20, you taught 30 lessons per unit. From 21 to 30, there are 40 lessons per unit. Let's move into how our tools are used in these upper units. One of the big shifts that occurs is in the proportion of time spent reading and writing in your class. In the earlier units, there is a greater focus on building that oral foundation. So in Unit 3, for example, writer time as a percentage of total class time is relatively small. However, in Units 21 to 30, you'll be spending a much greater percentage of your class time on these reading and writing tools, as our students are at a stage where they aren't so much learning to read as they are now reading to learn. In lower units, the writer always reinforced the phonics skills and the reading your students were doing according to their unit. This connection of the writer to other facets of your GrapeSEED lesson grows even stronger as we move into Unit 21 and above. We will get into specifics later, but your students will generally do a writing activity to prepare them to better understand the chapter that they will read. After reading the chapter, they will do another writing activity that helps reinforce the language and expressions used in the reader, as well as help check for understanding of the content they have just read. It can be helpful to think of these two materials as being linked. Whereas in lower units there was reinforcement of the writer in the reader and vice versa, in these units the writer directly sets up the reader, which in turn directly sets up the writer. You will generally repeat a 2-day cycle, where in day 1, you complete the Getting Ready Writer lesson, then read the corresponding chapter in the Adventure Reader. On day 2, you discuss the chapter with the class and then complete the Let's Review Writer activity. You would then move on to day 1 for the next chapter and writing assignments. One final thing to note before we jump into the teaching method is that the new Adventure Readers are another significant step forward when compared to the intermediate readers students had in Units 16 to 20. Readers are no longer a compilation of independent stories that share similar vocabulary and expressions. These adventure readers are full chapter books where, over time, students will experience a longer, more complex story. This is possible because of their own growth and maturity as developing children, as well as their strong foundation in English that now allows them to explore more complex ideas and tackle more challenging skills. Each chapter in the Adventure Readers introduces 5 new GrapeSEED read-write words that will be assembled, decoded, and written in the writing activity, completed before the actual reading of the chapter itself. So let's get into the teaching method. Your vocabulary cards, songs, chants, and stories will all generally be taught the same way you have been teaching them in lower units, but of course, defer to the instructions in your lesson plans on a given day. The only big difference of note is the flash-only VPCs, which are words students have learned in the past and flashed occasionally and independently from any accompanying material. You will see lesson plans direct you to use them, like the very first activity in Unit 21's Lesson 1. They can be found in your classroom material boxes in the back of your normal VPC deck. You can tell them apart by the number on the right of the card being in a circle for the flash-only VPCs, while it is in a box for the normal VPCs. Because the writer and adventure reader are so interconnected, when we talk about the teaching method, it is best not to separate them, but instead talk about their teaching method together.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.